My name is Rachel Zibula. I was born in Romania, Czernowitz, in 1917, November 7. My father's name was Maurice Bernstein, and he was an antique expert. Sally Bernstein was my mother's name. Her maiden name was Berger. We had 7 siblings. It was 5 girls, 1 boy. 1 boy perished in the war, for the First World War. Siblings' name was my oldest sister was Minnie. 1 boy who died in the war was William. The maiden's name was Minnie, Rachel, Gusti, Annie, and Hava.
Okay.
Or Claire, you could call her Claire. Well, we were all different. My brother was occupied, he was a librarian. He played the violin. I played the piano. My youngest sister wanted to play, but she didn't have a good hearing, so she couldn't. My father used to play the violin, so did my brother, and he was also composing. I was brought up in a nice, loving home, and I was active in many things in sport. Oh, I had every sport you could imagine. I had skating, skiing, athletics, dancing, rhythmic dancing, ballet dancing, and today I even dance by 90. My father was not religion. He was brought up by his grandmother because she was a religious person, Jewish, and my grandmother left Romania for the United States with her 3 daughters. But my father was with my grandmother, great-grandmother. It was his grandmother. So she brought up my father. She wanted him religious, but when he grew up, she knew that he wanted to be religious, and he wasn't. My mother was from 8 siblings. There were 7 girls, 1 boy. My uncle was an officer in the lieutenant in the war. The girls, 1 worked for the government, and the rest was marrying very young at that time. So did my mother. My mother had a profession which she didn't use, because it was not in style that a woman should work. So she was a housewife. And we had a maid, naturally, because with so many children, it wasn't easy for my mother. That was the reason that she didn't work. She was a fine lady, good-hearted, you know. So was my father, too. He taught us one thing, to be honest. He doesn't care about religion, but good people. And if somebody should stretch out your hand, you should give. We're a very close family. My grandparents were very lucky. All the children, every day they came to visit them, because it was not going by car, but we had a horse, and we had, you know, a cart, and we went with that for outings. Finished high school, and then the whole thing changed. I was married in 1941. His name was Maurice Fox. We were occupied by the Russians at that time, before the war broke out with the Russia and Germany. So he was killed in that war in the train with the soldiers, with the Russian took away from our country, the young guys, and then the German bombarded that train, and he perished in it. And I didn't want to marry 10 years. I was waiting and hoping that they would come back, because that was a romance of since childhood. Well, he didn't return. Then I searched, and sure enough, the explanation was that he perished in that ghetto, which I were in with my parents. But I was very lucky, we all were, because my father was very well known and respected in our city. So we had a lot of help. We had a German lawyer which took us out of the ghetto, and we were home. It was in 1943. I passed the border illegal because they would have killed me. And I was traveling in a train. I took off the Yellow Star. And I traveled in the train with a woman, Polish woman, which didn't know one word of German or Romanian. She was only Polish. And she was afraid of me because I was blonde, blue eye, and you know. So they figured I'm not Jewish. Sure enough, at the station, 2 German officers come into the train and sits down in our cabin. And my heart started to pound. That I heard the sound of my heart because I was frightened, not so much of me, but of that woman. And I gave her the advice not to talk, to cover her head and sleep. And the Germans started to talk German to me, and I'm perfect in German, so I spoke with them. They didn't know that I am Jewish. And the next day I spoke with him, very nice, very friendly, because if they would know that I'm Jewish, they would have thrown me out through the window. But I was lucky, regarded that my heart was pounding, but I was very quiet, and I carried a conversation with them. After 2 stations, thanks God, they left. And they saluted me, and they left. I was hidden by my cousin in Bucharest. That is the capital of Romania. And I was not going out because they were searching for those people who was passing the border to bring them back. But my cousin kept me. One day they came to check, and I was in the bus stop. But when I heard that they come, I was running up the stairs to the top of the building, and I was naked. It was winter, and I was hiding under the poles of the building, you know. But it was inside. And they didn't go so far to look there. They left. And then my cousin was married to a high Romanian officer, and her sister, where I was, where she did hide me, had very big connections with the army, because her husband was a major in the army. So he sent a soldier to bring me to his house, to a higher officer, not Jewish. And they did hide me until the whole thing was over. I was hidden, I didn't go out. Fled by myself because I wanted to bring the parents out, which I did. You know, I hired a truck and I went to the border and picked them up and brought them to Bucharest. There was a cousin, he was a second Einstein in mathematics, and he was killed, the whole family. My mother's sister, her husband, and 5 children. The Nazis took them over the Bug, and there they killed them. Mogilev, you know, all those countries where it was Russia. And in 1950, I left Romania for Israel. I lived in Israel about 3 years, where I married the second time, because I lost my first husband. I lost in the war, in the Holocaust. Oh, we didn't want to stay. We were afraid of the Nazis. The war was, we didn't want to miss the boat, because Israel took us on their expense out, because nobody would let us in. So we went to Israel. And there, when I lost my husband, I didn't want to remarry. It was 10 years after. And my uncle, my mother's brother, like I said, he was a lawyer, and he put on so much power and pressure on me. He said, "You're young, you're pretty, you're intelligent, you have to find somebody," because he had a friend, a doctor, and his wife wanted to matchmake me with somebody. It was a Polish guy. He was in the army, an accountant in the army. I really forgot his name because I didn't marry him. Because my uncle pressed me to come to Jerusalem because he wanted to match me with my husband. And I came to my aunt, my uncle. He came in the evening with a bouquet of flowers to meet me. And he took me out to a restaurant. It called, the name, let me recall it. Anyways, forgot the name. But we were dancing, and it was very spare food. And the waiter came to my husband, and he told him in his ear that he has liver. And I was sitting next and I was hearing liver, and I loved liver. So I said, "Liver?" And he said, "You love liver?" I said, "Yes." So anyways, he ordered the liver, we were dancing, and he brought me home. And then he was pressing my uncle that I should come back. And I didn't want to go back. And my mother, I was going out with this accountant. He wanted to meet his family. But then my uncle called up and he said that I should come right away because he is pressing him and so on. So I came, took my sister as the chaperone. That's what I was brought up, because we were not allowed to go out alone. We had to have a chaperone. So then it was 3 weeks that I was there, and he bought me the ring, engagement ring, and I got engaged. And I recall the wedding that I was crying the whole day. I didn't want to marry. I was crying the whole day. So my aunt was very angry. She said, "Look at your eyes. Your eyes are so red. How are you going to marry the way you are?" I said, "Oh." And the wedding was in the house where he had a factory of printing, and it was a very huge one, and all the machines were brought from Germany. And Ben-Gurion was then the prime minister of Israel, actually the founder. And he came to the opening of that factory. It was very huge, and printing, you know, toilet paper, which is very rare at that time. It was very rare to get. So we combined the that was for the children in school, you know, all the printing stuff. Huge machine from Germany. And I got used to be married.